I walked into the cafeteria and gulped. The only free seat was next to Joanna, one of the weirdest girls in school. She was always sitting alone, and usually I'd avoid her because people said she didn't speak much and was totally shy. But somehow, I felt kinda sorry for her. I mean, how bad could it be? Well, famous last words. It was bad. I sat down with a smile, but she just glared at me and grunted, "Go on then. Throw me your worst insult." I was confused and said, "Oh, no, I just wanted to sit here and say hi. Are you okay?" Suddenly, Joanna started speaking at 1,000,000 miles per hour, telling me that of course she wasn't okay and that she had to see a therapist every day. Then she showed me all the pills she had to take and said she had crippling anxiety. I was shocked. Overwhelmed with TMI, I felt uncomfortable and thought of leaving, but then she grabbed my hand and said, "We're friends now, right? I've never had a friend in my life before. You're the first person I've really been able to open up to. Not even my parents know how hard it is for me." Whoa, I couldn't leave her now. I patted on her shoulder and told her I'd happily be her friend. I mean, it would just be spending some lunch together or grabbing a coffee at most. It'd be fine. However, Joanna's interpretation of a friend was slightly different from mine. 3 days later, I got back from the library quite late, so I went straight to my room as usual and started changing, only to find Joanna right behind me as I turned around. I almost woke up the whole building with a scream of fright. "Oh, hey, Rumi," she said with a big grin. What? This was insane. Rumi? What do you mean? But she just laughed and said she'd felt very lonely in her dorm on her own, and seeing as I had a double room, she'd asked the dorm supervisor if she could move in with me. I guess it wasn't so bad. I mean, I got lonely too sometimes. So that night, we stayed up super late chatting. And to be honest, it was actually nice to have a roomie. We became quite close, and a few nights later, we were having a movie night. Joanna turned to me and said, "Carrie, there's something I need to tell you." Oh no, surely there wasn't any more disturbing things left. How did this girl cope? But then she started blushing and said, "I have a crush on someone. His name is Mitch." Oh gosh, I knew exactly who she was talking about. "Joanna, he's bad news. He's a total womanizer. You're way too good for him." At least, that's what I said, but what I meant was that he was only into popular girls. He'd never go for a girl like Joanna. Joanna didn't take it well. "You're jealous, aren't you? I bet you have a crush on him too." "Well, I confessed, so he's mine." "Huh, you're welcome to him. I never fancy someone like Mitch. I'm not that kind of girl." Joanna then said she'd prove to me that she could win him over. I felt annoyed at her and just went back to watching the movie. For a second there, it felt like my life had way more drama than ever before, and I started regretting ever sitting at her table that day. Little did I know, it was just the beginning. A week later, I was hit in the face by a huge surprise. Joanna and Mitch started dating. I was lying there listening to music when I heard voices outside the door. I opened it, and there was Mitch walking off. He turned back to blow Joanna a kiss, and then you should have seen the smug expression on her face. "Told ya," she said, laughing. Wow, cocky. But okay, I was happy for her. She was a woman of her word. But I was worried she'd get hurt. I didn't have time to tell her this, though, because pretty soon she was with him 24/7. He even came over to our dorm, and I was sick of listening to them kissing. They were disgustingly lovey-dovey all the time, and it quickly became exhausting. On Valentine's Day, he sent 100 balloons to our dorm, and I couldn't even get through the door. Could he be any more over the top? It wasn't even that romantic. But Joanna was smitten. It was painful to watch. But Not as painful as seeing Mitch walking along the street holding some other girl's hand. I froze. This couldn't be. I quickly texted Joanna asking her how things were going between her and Mitch. She replied immediately saying, "All good, why?" So I told her what I'd seen, but I got no reply. I rushed back to our dorm and asked her why she was ignoring me and if she was okay. But she just started shouting at me, saying I was trying to ruin her relationship because I was jealous. Clearly, she didn't believe me. I told her I was telling the truth, but she just got up and left, slamming the door behind her. Things got really awkward after that. She ignored me in the dorm, ignored me in class, and wouldn't reply to any of my texts. And she still brought Mitch back to our room and kissed him in front of me. Eventually, I couldn't take it anymore and asked her to move out. But I didn't expect what would happen next. Joanna lost it. She started shouting, "What's your problem? For the first time in my life, I'm happy and someone loves me. And there you are, trying to ruin this for me. And now you want to kick me out? It's not my fault you're single, Carrie. Maybe if you stopped being so jealous for a second, someone would like you back." I couldn't believe her. I wanted to scream. She was the worst. And the next morning, it got even worse. I was sitting with some friends before class started when suddenly Joanna walked in and burst into tears. People ran over to her and asked if she was okay, and that's when my blood ran cold. She started saying how I'd been bad-mouthing her boyfriend, and now I wanted to kick her out of our dorm. And then I heard my voice. I looked over, and she had her phone out and was playing a recording of our argument. Of course, she'd edited it to make me sound like the bad guy. Even my friends looked shocked, and Joanna told them all how I was a two-faced, good-for-nothing kind of girl and that I loved to gossip about everyone behind their backs. I tried to explain to everyone that Joanna was lying and that she was just angry, but everyone looked at me in shock. It was like they believed her. I was stunned. The next day, I noticed Joanna showing my friends some photos on her phone. They were screenshots of texts from me, but she'd edited them to create a total monster out of me. One time, Joanna had messaged me laughing about how my friend Valerie had the worst hairstyle ever, and I joked that she must have cut it by herself. And there was the message where Joanna talked about how Mitch said his ex, Anna, who was also our class president, must have been flirting with the economics teacher to get good grades. And I said, "Has Anna sunk that low? Not only having an affair with a married man, but basically committing academic fraud? I don't think she would do that, though." But of course, Joanna had cropped out the last sentence, and she didn't show her parts in the conversation either. By that way, I looked like the worst friend ever. I tried to tell them what Joanna was doing, but they were too hurt to believe me. But that's not all. You see, Joanna had sent these messages to the whole school. For the rest of the day, people were coming up to me and telling me I was nothing but a mean girl. And then at lunch, I went to sit in my usual spot with my friends, and suddenly they all jumped up and left me there alone. I could hear everyone whispering about me. And then the most popular girl, Amy, came over to me and said I was a disappointment to this college, and I didn't even deserve to be here. I couldn't hold back my tears, so I rushed back to my dorm. But standing there with her arms folded, blocking the door, was the dorm supervisor. She said that she'd received reports about my behavior and that I had 1 week to move out of the dorm. I didn't understand. What had I done? Apparently, people had told her I wanted to get her fired. And then I remembered Joanna saying those exact words and asked me how she could report to the manager. So I'd sent her a text explaining how to report her. Oh my gosh, she'd even used that against me? This was too much. I went to find Joanna. I was furious. She was ruining my life. When I got to class, I planned to show everyone our full chat conversations, unedited. But I didn't get the chance because Joanna was sobbing hysterically, and everyone was comforting her. She was saying how living with me was torture and that she had to take medication to deal with me. Enough! How dare you! I screamed. Why are you doing this to me? What did I ever do to you? Joanna, of course, started crying even louder, and everyone stared at me like they wanted to kill me. I walked out of there feeling completely empty. I'd lost my friends, my dorm, my reputation, and every last bit of dignity, all because of that snake. I still didn't know what I'd done wrong. The more I tried to understand it, the more everyone defended Joanna. It was useless. No one listened to me. Eventually, I ignored them all, moved out of the dorm, and acted like Joanna didn't exist. Fortunately, I made some new friends that loved and trusted me and never twisted my words. As for gossiping about me that everyone else still did, I learned to block it out. And then about 4 months later, I got an email from Joanna. I was shocked. She said, "Carrie, I'm sorry. You were right all along. Mitch was cheating on me, and I should have listened to you. Please forgive me. I'm begging you. I'll do anything to make it up to you. I'll confess to everyone. Please, let's just be friends again. I miss you." Ha! Not in a million years. I deleted the email right away. There was nothing that she could do to ever make it up to me. She'd ruined my life, and I was done with that toxicity. Good riddance.
Finally, I'm out of that morbid place. Now let me tell you, sharing a cell with a dozen other noisy, stinky, grumpy dudes ain't fun. Anyway, here I am, free as a bird now. So no one's here to pick me up. Suppose I'd have to call Mom. It took me a few seconds to familiarize myself with my phone. Jeez, it'd been 4 years. It was a miracle I hadn't turned into one of those leg-cradling crazy dudes. How I ended up in there in the first place was a joke. All I did was take some stuff from 1 or 2 warehouses and sell them on. No big deal. Yo, Mom, it's your boy Cole. I'm out, and yeah, I need a lift home. I spoke the moment I heard Mom's voice. Cole, Do you have any idea what hell your actions have put your mother through? My dad was so good at overreacting, but I needed somewhere to stay, so I could handle him. But Dad, Mom, come on, I'm still your son. You have the heart to see me homeless and sleeping next to rats? There was a brief pause. Then Dad grunted, "You can stay for a few weeks, but only for your mother's sake." Thanks, Dad. You're the man. Bingo. My parents were like putty in my hands. This was the life. I played video games all day, then partied all night. Then one night, I was getting ready to meet my friend Moose, when Mom told me that the pizza delivery guy was at the door. I shouted down to her, "You can shout me this one, and I'll get the next." I finished getting ready, and I must say, I was looking smooth. I strode down into the kitchen and grabbed a slice of pizza. Dad was sitting there glaring at me over his report. "If you can't afford to pay for items, then I suggest you don't order them." He looked at the pizza slice in my hand. Mom walked up behind him and placed her hands on his shoulders. "Darling, give him some more time. He's still adjusting to outside life." Thanks, Mom. You're the greatest. I gave her a greasy pizza kiss on the cheek. Any chance you can lend me some dough? Dad shook his head and sighed, while Mom went over to her purse and passed me some money. Hey, there'd be plenty of time to get a job and be responsible. Right now, I had 4 years of lost time to make up for. Once, I borrowed Dad's car. I swear I only had a couple of beers, but the world glitched out and went all blurry. The next thing I know, I'd driven straight into the neighbor's front yard. Oops. I opened my eyes the next morning to a killer headache, so all I wanted was some black coffee and a plate full of bacon. But I got Dad's death stare instead. "Just when I think you can't get any more irresponsible, you took my car without asking, drank too much, then drove into Gloria's beloved rose bushes." "Chill out, Dad. I'll fix it later," I said as I raided the fridge for food. "You're not the one having to pay for the damages. We've made our decision. You have 1 week to get out of our house." Now hold up. I had 0 places to go. I couldn't stay with Moose as he was crashing in his sister's garage, and I didn't know anyone else. How could they? I gotta chill a bit, so I pulled out my phone and started scrolling through dating apps. Then I matched with this stunning blonde called Trudy. She's a little older than me, but her family is rolling in dough, and also, she has her own business. Not only that, but she's hotter than an agitated dragon. So yeah, her photos seemed a little grainy, but guess the retro trend was in. Looks like I had it both ways, love and money. I have quite a face, but since I love beer and pizza, and without any dedication for the gym, I don't have the perfect body. But I needed to keep this girl interested. So I told her I was a tall dude with an impressive six-pack, who just graduated and was on the lookout for a girl with brains as well as beauty. This girl was actually pretty easy to talk to. She sent me pictures of her latest purchases, like phones, expensive watches, and designer clothes, along with the promise that when we started dating in person, she'd buy me whatever I wanted. Result: after 4 days of face pics and my priceless conversation, Trudy was smitten, and she sent me a message saying, "Cole, I haven't known you long, but I know how I feel. I love you. X." Okay, that's really fast, but yeah, I've won the lottery over here. Hey, maybe she lied about her look too, but it didn't matter. She's rich. So I replied to her, "I know, babes. I feel it too. X." We immediately arranged to meet in person and decided on a yellow dress code. I looked around the park trying to spot this gold mine, but all I could see was some old lady in a yellow dress. Okay, coincident, but why is she heading my way? The closer she got toward me, the wider her grin was. "Cole, right? It's me, Trudy." What? No. How come this corny, overweight, wrinkly old lady be Trudy? I was expecting the blonde beauty from the photos, not Big Bird. Once I got over the initial shock, we sat down and talked. Turns out my dream girl was in her 50s. All the descriptions and photos of her were true, but 30 years ago. She was clearly in the middle of a midlife crisis or something. "You're not the same either," she sneered. "You're barely taller than me. And where's the gym body?" All right, fair enough. I fake smiled. "Yeah, despite you looking different, I still find you very beautiful." That night, I tossed and turned. This was all so unexpected. Trudy was totally not my type. But dating her might not hurt. She was rich. And also, I had to move out tomorrow. So at least she'd pay for me. With that, I sent her a message. "Babe, you're beautiful, and I want to make us official. X." The next day, I moved in with Trudy. Now, let me tell you something. Her apartment was lavish. It was full of the latest tech. Crazy. Seeing as she was so old, she probably didn't know how to use them. She worked a lot, so most of the time I was home alone. And I was free to watch cartoons and movies, munch on potato chips, and play as many video games as I felt like. One time, I was watching a movie when the door opened. And in stepped this glary-eyed dude. I shouted at him, "Hey dude, you have the wrong apartment." He tutted and said, "I can assure you that I don't. I'm Alex, Trudy's son, and you must be Cole. I would say it's a pleasure to meet my mother's gold-digging boyfriend in the flesh, but unfortunately, it's not." What? Trudy has a son? And by the looks, he's even older than me. And how dare he called me a gold digger? I suppose I was, but still, he had no right to call me it. Even worse, he refused to leave. He just sat in the kitchen and waited for his mom to return. Then he had a heated argument with her in which he referred to me as a loser and a bum. Things weren't any better with my parents either. Dad told me to be independent and get a real job, not a sugar mama. And Mom was just crying. Whatever. This was their fault for kicking me out in the first place. What did they expect me to do? Live under a bridge? Few days after I met Alex, Trudy insisted on dragging me along to his lame work launch thing. As soon as I got there, I went straight to the food. I was stuffing a mini quiche into my mouth when this girl walked up alongside me and said, "Great minds think alike." I gave her a gormless look. Then she pointed at the food. We both headed straight for the food. I laughed at that. This girl was funny. And hot. Really hot. Her name is Beatrice, and she works for that loser Alex. After that, I started seeing a lot more of this Beatrice girl, as she often popped over with Alex, and while he was arguing with his mom, usually about me, I chatted to her. That was how I found out she wasn't having it easy either. She was behind on her rent because her truant brother had stolen the money and spent it all. I felt bad for her, so I took the envelope full of cash that Trudy had given to me, and I handed it to her. Okay, so I wouldn't be able to buy anything new for a few weeks, but it was worth it just to know that she'd be okay. Truth was, I was really falling for Beatrice, but I couldn't do anything about it, as I was with Trudy, and I was relying on her handouts. Soon, things became stinky. I came out of the shower to see Trudy standing there with my phone in her hand. "How could you?" she threw it at me. Yeah, so she'd read all of the messages I'd sent to Moose, saying how I didn't find her remotely attractive and I was only with her for a free ride. "Trudes, my babes, come on, those messages were just me joking," I laughed. "I was just messing around." "Shut up, you liar! You find me hideous. Alex was right. You were only using me for my money, and worse, you never went to college. Instead, you were in jail." I was about to lay on the cold charm when Alex and Beatrice bursted into the room. Alex shouted at me, "How lowlife you are! What a shameless gold digger! It's appalling. I've told her to report you to the cops." Beatrice interrupted. "No, don't do that. What Cole did was wrong, but he's not all that bad. Please." I was so moved. Took a look around. Trudy was crying. Alex was so furious his eyes were bulging. And Beatrice, well, she just looked disappointed. I then packed my stuff and left in shame. Well, that was a few months ago, and I have a decent job now. Even though I live back at home, I pay my way, and I'm saving up to put a deposit down on my own place. I never should have used Trudy like that. She might be old, but she still has feelings, and the way I treated her wasn't right. I was undeniably a douchebag back then. All I want is to have a happy life with Beatrice. I really love her, which is why I asked her to be my girlfriend, but she rejected me. Man, it stung, but I'm not giving up. Perhaps she might give me a chance once she sees I've changed. I can't fix the past. All I can do now is improve myself and keep on rolling forward.
This shift was boring. So as I handed the 2 coffees over to the girl, I couldn't help but daydream about what to have for lunch. Excuse me, why the attitude? The girl sounded annoyed. Then before I could say anything, she shouted, "I want to speak to your manager." The boy next to her tried to keep her calm and asked her to go outside first. Then he said to me, "I'm sorry about my sister." I mumbled, "It's okay," as I handed him $20 change. "Oh, just keep it," he smiled. But then he started apologizing, took the change, then left. What just happened? I took out my phone to check my face. Oh, great. I looked like I was sucking on wasps. And all because I was thinking about whether I should have pasta or a sandwich. Well, to be honest, what just happened wasn't new to me, but it never seemed to get any easier. Let me start at the beginning. So, I'm Isabel. I just graduated from high school and was soon to be a freshman at college. Ever since I can remember, my parents, friends, and teachers always asked me the same questions, such as, "What's wrong?" and "Why the long face?" When I told them that I was fine, they would always be like, "Are you sure?" Or, "If there's a problem, you need to tell us, okay?" Oh, it was so frustrating. There was even this one time where my teacher had to stop in the middle of a lesson to ask me not to look at her like that because my stare made her feel uncomfortable. What? I was just really focused. Then I eventually found out in high school. It was on a normal sunny day. I was sitting at the bus stop with my best friend Jocelyn when some guy came over and asked for directions. I looked up and the guy got startled and began to stutter. "Oh, sorry for bothering you." And then he left in a hurry. Huh? This was so confusing. He didn't even give me a chance to get a word out. So I turned to Jocelyn and asked if she might know what the guy's problem was. Maybe it's because you look like you want to kick his butt. Then she told me how everyone at school thought I was an arrogant snob. What? That was ridiculous. Why would they think of me like that? I asked her this, and she took out a mirror and held it to my face. Well, see it for yourself. I took a deep look in the mirror, and oh my God, she was right. I did look a bit moody, but I swear I wasn't. Not at all. The next day, Jocelyn sent me a link to an article. It was about people having a naturally grumpy face, also known as resting bee face, aka RBF. You know the word. No wonder nobody likes me and wants to be friends with me. Well, except Jocelyn, thank God. She saw beyond my sullen-looking exterior. I wanted college to be different, so I was determined to say goodbye to snobby Isabel and say hello to happy, joyful Isabel. I just needed to smile all the time. Sounds easy, right? So on my first day at college, I walked into the lecture hall with the biggest smile fixed on my face. I hoped I looked friendly and not like that creepy cat from Alice in Wonderland. But then my smile immediately vanished when I saw him. It was the guy who wanted to tip me $20 and then ran off with it. Ugh, why was he here? I was trying to come across as a sweet, friendly girl, and I didn't need him spreading rude rumors about me. So the easiest solution was to avoid this guy as much as possible. Only the universe had other ideas, and I found myself stuck doing a group project with him. Ugh, great. We all sat in a circle, and I found out he's called Carter. Our group leader, Carla, assigned each of us a task. While listening to her, I tried to hold my smile as brightly as I could. Keep it steady, steady, I thought to myself over and over. But you know what? Fake smiling is hard work, and it causes serious face ache. Then my cheek started twitching, so to avoid looking like a weirdo, I decided to take a break from smiling. And that's when Carla noticed me and asked, "Did I say something wrong?" Everybody was gawping at me. I could feel myself blushing. Great, now I probably resembled a grumpy tomato. That's when Carter spoke up. "Just continue. We'll say if anything's unclear." Thank you, Carter. Now, I know how Lois Lane felt after being rescued by Superman. This felt even more intense than the movie. And oh, he was actually kinda cute too. I felt a little bummed out after the group meeting. All I wanted to do was make some friends, but I'd already given Carla the wrong impressions about myself. I'm not a big party goer, but perhaps the big freshman party happening on Friday would be a good place to make friends, right? Feeling down, I sat on the side of the bench by the college sports field and just looked up to the sky. Then I noticed Carter playing soccer with some guys. So I watched him play for a bit. It could have been the lighting, or the fact he looked so hot when sweaty, but I couldn't take my eyes off him. Maybe I should try talking to him. The next day, I walked into the lecture hall and spotted Carter sitting alone reading a book. This was my chance. I could sit next to him and start a convo. Okay, Isabel, keep it cool. Oh no, not cool. Cool means arrogant. Keep it happy. You got this. Smile on. Check. Hi, is this seat? Carter looked up. Oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't know this was your seat. Then he gathered his stuff and moved to another table. What? Ugh, curse you, RBF! I wasn't giving up this easily, so I searched online and read that makeup could help fix my situation. So, I applied makeup around my mouth and eyes, then went to my lecture. Only during the group discussion, Carter whispered to me, "Are you sick? As you look a bit pale. Why don't you go home? I can take notes for you." After hearing him say that, I actually did feel a bit sick. Sick of the constant failure. But wait, this Friday was the party. That would be my last opportunity to make friends and talk to Carter. I'd never been to a party before, mainly because no one had ever invited me to one. Pretty sure they thought my grumpy look would kill the mood. So I spent ages deliberating on an outfit, opting for a bright-colored dress to make me look more cheerful. As I walked into the party, I couldn't stop shaking. Everyone looked like they were having a great time, while I just looked like a grumpy kid longing for their mama. It's okay, Isabel. Keep calm, I told myself. I just needed a couple drinks to boost my confidence. So, I got a couple of shots from the bar, and wow, I immediately felt like a whole new person. I was about to bravely talk to some girls when suddenly a guy came over to me and said, "Hey, looks like you're having a bad time. If you don't like these things, I think you should just go home. It's okay." Great. If even alcohol couldn't help me, then what else could? I lost all interest in making friends, so I decided to take the random guy's advice and leave. Everyone would have far more fun without having to see my moody face anyway. As I hurried out of there, I heard someone shout, "Isabel, wait up!" I turned around and saw that it was Carter. He caught up with me and asked why I was leaving so early. I muttered out how partying wasn't really my thing and I'd rather hang out somewhere else. "Yeah, I'm not so keen on them either. Can I come with you?" I froze for a minute, but I guess he presumed I was angry with him, as he apologized and went to leave. Oh, hell no. No way am I gonna let him slip away again, so I said quickly, "Of course you can come!" But it came out as loud screaming. The poor guy must have felt like a tiger was growling in front of his face. Well, at least he was still coming with me, right? Even if it was out of fear. He looked a little unsure as I led him toward one of my favorite places, which was underneath this bridge, but when he saw all of the awesome graffiti, he seemed to be more at ease. He had fun, looking from one piece to the next. Then we started talking, and turns out we could get on pretty well. We soon became close friends, and I even introduced him to Jocelyn. The more I spent time with Carter, the more I liked him, and I started to think that he liked me too. Don't ask me why. It's just a gut feeling. Then one day I opened the door to see Carter standing there with his huge bouquet and a cute gift box. Oh, sweet Lord, were they for me? I knew I needed to say something, so I mumbled out, "Who is that for?" Ouch. Did that sound a bit harsh? Should I ask again? And maybe with a softer voice and a smile. But before I could say anything, Carter replied, Oh, these are for Jocelyn. Can you please give them to her? Thanks." He handed me them, then ran off. What? Carter was in love with Jocelyn? But hey, it's no shocker that good things never happen to me, and someone with a naturally joyful look like her would get all the guys. Let's face it, who wants a mean-looking girlfriend? This sucked. After that, I purposefully avoided Carter, and we didn't talk at all for a week. It was all too much. So one day after lectures, I went to my happy place under the bridge. What? There was this new graffiti drawing. It was huge, ugly, and I think it was for me. As in dried, dripping letters, it said, "I love you, Isabel." I stared at it open-mouthed. Was this someone's idea of a joke? Then someone came up alongside me. It was Carter. "It's not my finest work, but I tried," he said coyly. Huh? He did this, but why? Then he continued, "The flowers and gift were for you, but I thought you were annoyed, so I freaked out and said they were for Jocelyn. So afterward, I called her and told her the truth, and she said that you like me too." Now that explains the weird looks Jocelyn has been giving me. I was so having words with her later. "You know, I drew that a week ago. I've been following you every day after college. Not in a creepy way. I just wanted to be here when you first saw it. And oh man, it was so worth it." Then he gave me the cutest smile and pulled me in for a hug. Oh, wow. This guy knew how to make a girl melt. And you know what? I was smiling, and I wasn't forcing it. So that's it. We became an official couple. Turns out he doesn't care if I have a RBF or not, as he took the time out to discover the real me. You should never judge a book by its cover, as you might miss out on the best adventure ever. So, if that girl or guy looks a bit miserable, then maybe you shouldn't rule them out as being arrogant and moody, and instead, give them a chance.
Job hunting is so not fun. But my current job as a waitress isn't working out. There's too much standing around. I now have a blister on my foot. Totally disgusting. Ooh, hang on. This one sounded interesting. Retired couple seeks a well-mannered female housekeeper to attend to their country estate. Board and meals included. This job sounded like such an easy ride, so I called them immediately. And yep, they invited me over. So, this is their country estate. Geez, it's basically a castle. The owner, Mrs. Harris, answered the door. She seemed friendly enough, and she gave me a tour of the place. I expected her to interview me or something, but in the end, she just showed me a bedroom, then said, "I hope this room is adequate enough for you. You'll start tomorrow. My husband and I are away from home quite often. All you have to do is keep an eye on the place and play with our son, as he does get lonely." Huh? I didn't see anything about babysitting in the job description. But I mean, come on, how bad could playing with some little kid be? And who cares? This was the perfect job. They were paying me a high salary to do practically nothing, not even cleaning or cooking, as they had many maids for that. This was over the top. Some people had way more money than sense. I needed to hurry up and move in. For the first few days, the Harrises weren't around, and I didn't see any signs of a kid. I mooched around the mansion and explored the grounds. Then one day I was on the 3rd floor inspecting a funny-looking portrait when I heard footsteps behind me. Startled, I turned around and saw a guy holding a teddy bear and licking a lollipop. He was looking straight at me. Okay, weird. "Hello? And you are?" I asked. "Fred," he said, with a very childish tone. Huh? He was like almost 30 already. How come he spoke like that? "Fred wants to play." He raised the teddy bear up to my face, like an invitation. "All right," I shrugged, then followed him into his room. Whoa, it was like a toy store in there. He wheeled a toy truck over to me, so I took it and made car sounds as I moved it around. He clapped his hands and cheered excitedly. I ended up spending the rest of the day there playing these childish games with him. Then when I looked up, I saw Mr. and Mrs. Harris standing in the doorway, and beside them was a cameraman who was filming Fred and me. They asked to talk privately, so I followed them out to the garden. Mr. Harris started, "Fred is our only son. Past traumas affected him, so now, although he appears to be an adult man, he still acts like a kid." Now that made sense. And too bad for him, though. The story continued that Mr. and Mrs. Harris used to work in the media. A few years ago, they decided to record Fred's daily activities, then edited them into videos to make a weekly series on social media. Wow, a show about a man acting like a child? How strange. "The audience loves watching Freddie." Mrs. Harris giggled, but then she immediately changed her tone. "But I do worry they'll soon get tired of watching just him. I think he should have a friend. It will help the show, and it'll be good for Freddie as he'll feel less lonely. I wonder." She looked at me all wide-eyed. Noticing my skeptical look, Mr. Harris jumped in before I even opened my mouth. "We'll pay you double." Whoa, what a deal! I mean, it's not like I needed to be an award-winning actress or anything to be in this type of videos. Most importantly, that amount of money was insane. Only an idiot would have turned down an offer like this, right? So I started being friends with Fred. We shared toys, played in the garden, and did all those childlike things together. To be honest, I found him really sweet, and I felt sorry for him. Whenever he saw me, he beamed at me and usually handed me his favorite toy, and that made me feel good. So, okay, the cameraman followed us around all day, but I soon forgot he was there. And I also never check out the final videos, as I found it cringy to watch myself. Then one day, the Harrises sat me down to talk to me again. Mrs. Harris looked at me as she said, "You may consider Freddie as a child, but he is now a 27-year-old man, handsome and physically healthy. He likes you, and he has every right to date." Then after showing me several comments on the internet, they told me frankly that the views would be higher if I became Fred's girlfriend. So, is it some kind of real-life fairy tale? A kind-hearted girl falls in love with a mentally disadvantaged man? Jeez. But I'm not into him that way, I groaned, pulling a wry face. Darling, she touched my arm. It would only be for the camera, and it would make Freddie so happy. And of course, you'll be generously compensated, Mr. Harris added. Oof, that much money? Who could say no? And it was only acting. Besides, Fred enjoyed making the videos, right? They must have had millions of views for the Harrises to throw money around like this. So I quit hesitating and agreed. They handed me an improv script and told me to do exactly whatever was written in it. The more convincing my performance, the higher my salary. Oh man, not long ago, I didn't have a cent to my name, and now I had thousands of dollars in my bank account. I could go to college, get myself an apartment, etc. A bright future was ahead for me. In the first video, I sat down next to Fred, took his hand, but he immediately started a thumb war. So I gave up on the hand-holding and softly said, Fred, I love spending time with you. You're so sweet and kind, and I have feelings for you. He let out an excitable shout. Then he pretended to be an airplane and did loops around the room. The next few videos didn't get any easier. When I tried to snuggle up to him, he'd whack me with his giant teddy bear. And when I went in for a kiss on his cheek, he pressed a toy car into my face. That was why when I read the next script, in which we were going to have a romantic dinner together, I couldn't help sighing and rolling my eyes. But it was work, so I put on a pretty dress and walked into the dining room. It was decorated with flower petals on the table, and there was mood lighting. Delicious? I asked while he was stuffing his face. He nodded, threw down the silverware, and clapped his hands. Fred cooks for Lynn eats. Fred chewed as he spoke, spitting food all over. Man, this was so hilarious, I couldn't help laughing. Then he walked over to me and hugged me tightly. Oh my God, he got food stains all over my dress. I looked straight into his eyes and thought, yeah, I did like him as a cute little brother. Poor guy. If only he wasn't so unfortunate. Suddenly, I felt his hands tightening around my waist. Stunned, I pushed him back and feigned interest in my food. A huge amount of money was transferred into my account that month, but I didn't feel so youthful anymore. So I started going off script and doing things that I thought were good for Fred. I used his toys to teach him math skills. I read him good books, and I showed him how to make cupcakes. One evening, when I was walking back to my room, Mr. Harris blocked my path and, scowling at me, said, What the hell are you playing at? Did you even read this week's script? I tried pushing past him, but he grabbed my arm. You're causing our viewers to leave. I'm paying you less this month. I shook myself free of his grip and replied, Money? Is that all that matters to you? Then I rolled my eyes and returned to my room. That night, I ended up looking up the videos. In one of the older ones, Fred was in a suit and looked super uncomfortable. Every time he tried to loosen the tie or unbutton the shirt, a stick went in the frame and hit him in the butt. After a few tries, Fred threw himself on the floor and started having a tantrum. There were so many comments like, OMG, this is way too hilarious, and grow up, man, or don't, for our entertainment. Oh no, people were so mean. Fred didn't choose to be like that. The Harrises were using their own son to get rich by making fun of him. Poor Fred. I had to stop this. I packed my bag, stormed into the room where the Harrises were watching TV and said, I like Fred and still want to be his friend, but I'm not going to be part of this freak show anymore. I quit. And if you care about Fred at all, I suggest you do the same. I expected them to beg me to stay or something, but Mrs. Harris just snarked. All right then. If you want to quit, just leave. Why bother making a fuss about all this? Girls like you won't be hard to replace anyway. How ruthless were they? I was fueled with anger. So I left their dumb mansion immediately and didn't look back. And guess who is cooking in my kitchen while I'm telling you this crazy story? Yep, It's Fred." A few weeks after I left, I answered the doorbell to find Fred standing there. Crazier still, he was acting completely normal. Turns out the Harrises were neglectful of Fred, so he was raised by an old butler, like Bruce and Alfred. When Fred was 15, his parents ended up jobless and in debt. Fred told me, "I wanted their attention so badly, so I started acting like I was still a little kid." But then his cute, silly actions meant his parents came up with their crazy video idea. They lied about Fred's age, since he does look a bit older, then made him solo act Dumb and Dumber on camera for years. At first, I thought this would be a good way to help my parents overcome their financial difficulties. But I soon grew tired of pretending, and they had more than enough money. So I told them to stop, but they refused. Then he told me that the night I left, he got into a heated argument with his parents and told them he wasn't doing the show ever again. "I don't know anyone else, and have feelings for no one else. But you," he confessed. And whoa, turns out he's only 19. So I let him stay with me and, well, we started dating. Like real romantic dates and a real romantic grown-up relationship. I still have a lot of money in my account, and Fred took all the money he deserved from his parents, then moved in with me. I'm starting college next month, and I can't wait. Meanwhile, Fred has found an online course and is waiting for the results from the new part-time job. Also online. Well, he's gotta hide for quite a while, since his face is all over the internet. But our future together is really wide open this time. Now, excuse me, we have a dinner date to enjoy. This is a real-life fairy tale, baby.
Ma'am, sorry to inform you of this, but according to our information, Bella Hiddleston was reported dead 2 months ago after disappearing in the forest, the secretary said. What? This couldn't be happening. But that's my name, and I'm clearly still alive. This was some sick mistake. I asked them to check again, but they kept saying the same thing. Had I been missing for so long that my family actually thought I'd died? The accident had been pretty crazy, so I was feeling confused. I mean, what had I been doing in a forest in Cambodia in the first place? I tried so hard to remember, but I couldn't recall anything. Luckily, some local villagers had found me in a trapping pit and helped me recover. Otherwise, I would have died. I then asked the people in the embassy to help me call my husband and sister. There had clearly been a big misunderstanding, and I wanted to fix this right away. God, the weight was killing me. The secretary tried, but she said, "Sorry, ma'am, we can't reach either of those numbers." This was unbelievable. I was stuck in a foreign country with no ID, no contact with relatives, and I'd been reported dead. But in a flash, I realized that I could borrow someone's phone to reach for my acquaintances via social media. So as soon as the secretary lended me hers, I went straight to my husband's profile. But I was so stunned, I almost dropped the phone when I saw his latest update. He'd just made an announcement that my funeral was taking place the following week. OMG! What was happening? How could this be real? I kept scrolling down his profile and saw my sister had posted an old selfie with him saying, "Ronnie, I know this is a tough time, but I'm always here for you. We'll get through this together." Hang on, what did she mean? Firstly, I wasn't actually dead. Hello? But also, I know my sister used to have feelings for Ronnie. Did she assume that she could just be with him now that she thought I was dead? What a traitor! We were so close. Surely she wouldn't treat me like this. I had to get home and sort this out once and for all. I asked the embassy to help me fly home without informing my family in advance. I wanted to surprise them. Believe it or not, the day I was due to arrive home was the day of my funeral. What a coincidence, right? I went directly to the funeral venue, in disguise, of course. I wore a huge black hat and sunglasses to hide my face and sat way at the back so no one would notice me. There were so many people there. My family, friends, and even my business partners. It was so bizarre. And then I saw Ronnie. He looked exhausted. I just wanted to run up to him and scream, "I'm alive! You can be happy again!" But then my sister Kylie appeared and took his arm and whispered something in his ear. I froze. They looked close, too close for comfort. And then I noticed people around me whispering, "Oh, it can't be that bad. He'll get a pretty penny from the insurance company for Bella's death." And then another lady said, "Not just that, but a younger, prettier wife too, by the look of things." I wanted to puke. Ronnie and Kylie were hugging each other now. All of this made me feel like my whole existence was meaningless. Nobody here really cared about me. I couldn't watch my sister and husband for a second longer. I ran out into the street and kept walking until I couldn't walk anymore. Then I found a motel to stay at. The next morning, I snuck home after my husband went to work. I needed to pick up some of my stuff and get some money. It was so weird being home. Everything looked the same, but I noticed none of my stuff was lying around anymore. Then I spotted it. A big box in the corner. I ran over to open it, and inside was all my belongings. I was shaking as I picked up the wedding photo that used to be on our nightstand. I mean, I was barely fresh in the grave, and already Ronnie had boxed me up. It was almost like he couldn't wait to kick me out of his life. Ouch! I wanted to get out of there, so I quickly went to our bedroom to get some cash and clothes. That's when I discovered a shocking secret that made me fall onto the floor. As I was taking my clothes out of my cupboard, a strange piece of paper fell out. And guess what? The first line caught my eye was Bella's death plan. It was a sketch showing the path leading to a waterfall and made up evidence along the way. OMG! This was it! I knew that waterfall. It was pretty close to where I had the accident. So, had Ronnie planned this? Was he sick in the head? What had I ever done to him to deserve this? I had to run out of there to clear my head, but something caught my eye at the newsstand. It was Kylie, on the front of the newspaper in an article about how she was going to be running the company in place of our grandfather. There was a photo of Kylie and Ronnie at the inauguration, and look how happy they were. They didn't seem to be upset about my death at all. I wanted to rip the paper up. But wait, why would my grandfather give up his position? He had never mentioned it. He loved his job. This didn't sound right. So I quickly took a taxi to his place to find out what was going on. When I got there, I was so shocked. My heart sank upon seeing him hooked up to medical equipment. Turns out that after he'd heard the news about my death, he'd had a heart attack. When he spotted me by the door, he was so stunned he almost fell off his bed. We hugged and cried, and I told him it had all been a big mistake. Gosh, I was so happy to see him. I could see he was tired, so I told him to rest up and I'd visit again soon. Then on the way out, I spoke to his assistant, Cody. "I need a favor. Could you help me prepare a case against Ronnie?" But suddenly I heard footsteps coming towards me. "Bella? Is that you?" I turned around, and it was Ronnie. I didn't even have time to think clearly before he rushed in to hug me tightly. I could feel the tears rolling down his cheeks, and he seemed genuinely shell-shocked to see me. I was disgusted, though. I pushed him away and said, "Stay away from me." But it was like he didn't hear me. He just said, "These have been some of the worst months of my life. I can barely sleep or eat. I can't believe you're alive." Liar! He was a liar. I started shouting at him, saying, "Stop acting like you give a darn. You wanted me dead. Just wait until this gets out. You'll be behind bars for the rest of your life." Then I took the sketch out of my bag and threw it at him. Ronnie swore he'd never seen it before, but I didn't believe it. If it's not his, then was he trying to say it was mine, or what? Ha! Hilarious. Suddenly, Cody interrupted our argument and said, "Calm down, please. Actually, I think the one who has been acting a bit shady recently is Kylie." Then Cody told us how, according to our grandfather's will, his inheritance would be split equally between me and Kylie. However, I was to be the one in charge of the company. Kylie had found out about this and had a big argument with our grandfather. And then not long after my accident, his health had deteriorated. Instead of letting him mourn my death, Kylie had insisted he transfer the business to her name so she could take care of it all. Then Ronnie said, "Bella, it was Kylie who set up our trip. Then you suddenly disappeared. I searched for you in Cambodia for weeks, but Kylie persuaded me to come home because your grandfather was so ill. Then the police canceled the case, and Kylie kept telling me to file your death certificate. I shouldn't have listened to her. I'm so sorry." "Stop blaming other people for your problem," I growled at Ronnie, but inside my heart, I felt like I couldn't breathe. Why would my sister do this? And then I heard Kylie's voice, and to prove it all, Ronnie told me and Cody to hide. And then he went towards her and said, "Kylie, about Bella's death." Before Ronnie could finish his sentence, she gave him a big smile and put her arm through his. "Well, now that her funeral is over, nothing is stopping us from being together, right?" Ronnie forced a smile. Then Kylie laughed and said, "Oh, come on. Don't be sad. My jealous sister didn't deserve you. You know what? She actually had this whole plan to test your loyalty, but then she ended up getting a taste of her own medicine." At that moment, my head started to hurt, and suddenly some of my old memories came flooding back. The sketch. It was mine. I was the one who'd made the plan. It all started when Kylie had told me that Ronnie was cheating on me, and I'd believed her and followed her advice to fake my own disappearance to test his love for me. How could I have been so stupid? When I realized I was alone in that forest and she wasn't coming back, I panicked and fell into a trapping pit, hurting my legs and getting stuck. It was all coming back to me now. I couldn't handle this. I ran towards her and painfully screamed, "How could you do this to me, Kylie?" At first, she was shocked to see me, but then she just smirked and said, "Huh, are you still alive? Well, either way, it's too late. The company is mine now. Oh, and so is Ronnie, baby." Then she just rolled her eyes and said, "You were just the adopted child, so what makes you think you have the right to always steal everything from me?" At that moment, our grandfather appeared and slammed his cane on the ground. "Kylie, stop it." Kylie just sulked and said, "Honestly, why would you give her the whole company?" Then our grandfather said, "Look at yourself, Kylie. Are you really fit to be running a company? Sort yourself out. You are a disappointment to this family with your dirty, nasty tricks." I couldn't believe Kylie was still using the adopted thing to hurt me. So what if I was adopted? That didn't mean I wasn't a part of this family. She'd always been so jealous of me, even though I hadn't done anything. Kylie started crying and ran out of there saying she was sick of never being anyone's favorite. Well, maybe if she hadn't left me to die, people would like her more. I was so shocked that she'd done this to me, and all because of jealousy. I won't lie. It took me so long to work through this. I still haven't forgiven her properly, but I guess it will just take time. As for me and Ronnie, we've taken over the family business, and I realized that Ronnie had always been loyal. Kylie had just made up that he was cheating because she couldn't bear to see me so happy. One thing's for sure, I won't ever be testing his love again. No more faking death for me.
I blinked open my eyes. Whoa, my head felt dizzy. And, why was I covered in scratches? My mind was totally blank. I couldn't remember what happened. The last picture flashing through my mind was a heated argument between me and some guy. Then I stormed off and now, here I am, in this gloomy place. I think it's a basement or something. It's cold, and it stinks of damp. Dang it! I cannot remember his face. I knew I needed to get out of here, and fast. I ran to the door and tried opening it, but to no avail. It's locked. I slammed my hands against the door and shouted, "Anyone? Help!" I could hear footsteps approaching, so ignoring my throbbing palms and burning throat, I banged on the door and screamed out, "Open the door!" Oh my God! It's him! The guy I'd been arguing with before! He was holding a sandwich and smiling gently at me. "Oh, Alice, my puppy, are you awake? I thought you might be hungry." "Who are you? You brought me here, didn't you? What do you want?" He looked confused, then sadly blurted out, "Oh no, honey. You must have memory loss from the accident. It's your Josh here. I'm your boyfriend." I squinted at him. He did look familiar, but what boyfriend? What accident? He showed me the photos on his phone. OMG! That was me with him, and we looked so happy together. But why can't I remember anything? I hit my head with my hands in frustration, while Josh just stood there against the wall staring at me and giggling. So maybe this Josh guy was my boyfriend, but that didn't explain why he'd locked me up in this dungeon. This wasn't a normal boyfriend thing to do. I rushed to the door, but he grabbed me in his arms. "Let me out! You definitely have some wicked intention going on bringing me here," I scowled. "Oh my gosh, Alice, you've been watching too many movies. Do you really not remember anything?" I gave him a clearly not look, then folded my arms. "I guess the accident was pretty intense. We argued, then you insisted on driving while you were drunk, and then caused a fatal accident. Never mind. I think we shouldn't go in too deep about that right now. It must be traumatizing for you. But that's why I decided to bring you here, so the cops wouldn't arrest you." What? Why couldn't I remember such a horrible thing? But looking at all the wounds on my face and body, maybe everything was exactly like what Josh said. No, I have to confess. I stuttered in tears. "Are you crazy? Do you want to go to jail?" But, Alice, no buts. I'm gonna protect you and keep you safe." This was a lot to process, so in a moment of panic, I found myself agreeing to his crazy plan. Josh said this was an emergency bunker back from his grandfather's time. Sure thing. I mean, it sure smelled musty. There's not even a window, just a flickering wall light. It felt like I was in a horror movie. Josh also told me that he'd taken my phone off me, so the cops wouldn't be able to trace it and arrest us both. And that's it. Every morning, noon, and night, Josh would bring me food and talk to me about his day. "Puppy, I'm home." Puppy? Oh, it sounded cute at first, but I soon became allergic to that word. "Hey, puppy, eat this. Puppy this, puppy that. Puppy, puppy, puppy." I was so fed up with the word puppy that at times I actually thought I was nothing more than a pet to him. Then each night, he insisted on rubbing my back so I'd fall asleep more easily. Sounds nice, right? But no, it wasn't. He rubbed it really hard, and when I asked him to stop, he just laughed. Obviously, he wasn't doing it to make me feel better, but regarded it as a pastime. Ugh! And that's not all. A few times, I'd wake up to see him sitting there, staring at me with this gummy grin on his face. Then, when I checked my hair, I saw that he'd tied loads of these dumb little bows in it. "Are you crazy? I'm not a kid!" I grumbled while pulling and throwing all those dumb things out of my head. "But puppy, they look so cute. Tom always liked them." I glared at him. Didn't bother saying anything anymore. Oh, and FYI, yes, Tom's his old dog's name. Okay, so I didn't need a genius to figure out that something was seriously up with this guy's head. But then, things got weirder. One time, he brought down food for us to eat together. It was fried chicken, and as soon as I smelt it, my eyes sparkled. I was about to take a piece when suddenly he pulled the plate away and took a big bite. I didn't even have time to react. Then he handed me the chicken thigh bone he hadn't finished yet. "Help me with the rest, puppy. This part is too hard to gnaw." I rolled my eyes at him and flushed up with anger. Seeing my reaction, he said, "What's wrong, puppy? Tom always loved the leftovers." "Are you crazy?" I screamed. "Yo, I'm kidding. Don't you know how to take a joke?" He grinned. Kidding? What kind of kidding is that? I've had enough of this. This place was driving me insane. I could hardly sleep at all because I couldn't even distinguish between day and night. Then, when I did close my eyes, I found myself tormented by the serious crime I'd committed. Josh was trying to save me, yes, but I didn't ask him to do that. I couldn't live like this. I needed to face the truth. I had to turn myself in. The next morning, when Josh brought me breakfast, I told him what I wanted to do. Expectedly, he got mad and glared at me. "Alice, why do you want to go to jail so badly?" "I can't stay here forever. I have to face up to what I've done." "But it's so peaceful here with me." Peaceful? Was he being serious? It sure didn't feel peaceful. Instead, I felt like I was playing the role of his pet. I lurched forward, but Josh immediately grabbed me so I couldn't move. I tried squirming my way free, but he was a strong guy. Suddenly, he covered my nose with a handkerchief and my eyes closed. Then everything turned black. I slowly opened my eyes. I was in the same familiar room, but bars. I saw bars! Ugh! I was in a cage! Then I kicked something. It was a water bowl! "Puppy, you're so naughty. I can't lose you, so I've put you in here." He grinned at me as he handed me a sandwich. I chucked it away, then screamed at him to let me out. Seeing this, he immediately left and returned with a bunch of plush toys and dropped them in the cage. "Hope they'll make you happier." Then he tried to stuff the sandwich into my mouth. Furiously, I took a bite and spat it in his face, then sneered while throwing the toys at him. Jeez, some of them even squeaked. "Wow, okay." His demeanor changed, and his eyes turned scary. "If that's what you want, don't blame me later." Things were different after that. Each day, he only gave me a bowl of those gross-smelling biscuits, then he'd just sit there gawping at me. At first, I refused to eat them. But in the end, I was so exhausted that I gave in, even though I'm pretty sure they were dog biscuits. Ugh! I realized that resisting him wasn't benefiting me at all. It was only making him act more horrible. That's when a genius plan popped into my head. So the next time when Josh appeared with the biscuits, I smiled sweetly at him and said, "Josh, baby, it's been so long since we've been on a date. How about you go and get us a bottle of wine, and we can spend some quality time together?" His eyes lit up, and of course, he agreed without hesitation. He hurried off to get the wine. "Cheers to us!" "Josh, you're the love of my life, and I'm so grateful to God for bringing you into my life. Please stay with me forever." I flashed a sweet smile and whispered in his ear. Every time he took a sip of wine, I fluttered my eyelashes at him as I refilled his glass. To say I'm a Hollywood actress with an Oscar-worthy performance would be an understatement. Soon, Josh was so drunk he went cross-eyed. He fell to the ground before I even finished pouring him the last glass of wine. Seizing the opportunity, I stepped over him to get out, when suddenly, a hand grabbed my ankle. Oh no, I'm screwed! My heart felt like it was about to jump out of my chest. I immediately turned around, ready to fight him when, well, it turned out he was just dreaming. Phew. Thank God. I gently pulled my foot free and immediately dashed out of there. I climbed up the stairs to a living room where I found my phone left on the table. I quickly grabbed it and ran out of that horrible house. My legs trembled, and I felt like they might give away beneath me at any second. But somehow, I managed to find the inner strength to keep on running. I couldn't use my phone as it was out of battery, and I was too disoriented to figure out where my home was. So, when I stumbled upon a police station, I walked toward it. I took a deep breath. This was a tough decision. I knew I was going to jail, but I couldn't live in creepy Josh's basement forever and be his substitute pet. No thanks. I had to face up to what I'd done. "Sir, I'm here to confess." The cop looked confused and told me there hadn't been a fatal accident recently. But then he said I looked familiar, so he looked up my name, and turns out my family had reported me missing. That liar Josh had tricked me. It was all a ruse so he could imprison me. How vile! I charged my phone, and up popped hundreds of messages and voicemails from my worried friends and relatives. This was all so overwhelming. I put my head down for a moment. Then all the memories gradually surfaced. I'd been in the mall parking lot, and I felt like someone was following me. So I hid in the corner, and that's when Josh appeared. So I asked him, "Why are you following me?" "Alice, I love you. Please come back to me." I rolled my eyes and started walking away from him. "Go away, weirdo! We're done!" Then he grabbed my shoulder. I shook myself free and ran away, when a car came out of nowhere and... Ugh! Yes, of course. Josh was my crazy, controlling stalker ex. So he must have taken advantage of my unconsciousness to take me back to his basement and come up with his bonkers plan. Then to make things even easier for him, I ended up with memory loss. Typical! It was a nightmare. But thankfully, it's over now. The cops took my statement, and soon after that, my family came to pick me up. They all burst out crying, and we hugged each other tightly. It's taking a while to get back to normal life after all the trauma, but I'm getting there. I do want to vomit whenever I hear anyone say the word puppy. Ugh. However, this didn't stop me from getting my own rescue dog, Lily the Corgi, and I never put bows in her fur. As for Josh, well, he was convicted for false imprisonment and has to stay in jail for 4 years. Who's in the cage now? Serves you right. I was sitting in the reception with an ice pack pressed to my head, waiting for my mom to come pick me up. Ugh, that stupid rogue ball during PE! Oh, there she was, glamorous as always. She rushed over and hugged me, checking if I was okay. Then she guided me out of there and along the hallway. A group of teenage boys stopped dead and stared open-mouthed as we walked by. One even wolf whistled. Even my math teacher, who was walking out of his classroom, started readjusting his tie and waved over at us. No, those reactions weren't for me. They were for my mom. She's just too beautiful to ever be fazed by how men act around her. On the way back home, I got a message from my bestie, Minnie. "I bet men would all compete to win a date with your mom. She was like a goddess earlier." I giggled to myself. The thought of a bunch of adult men competing to win my mom's affection amused me. I couldn't understand why my mom was still single. She's gorgeous, successful, and a really kind person. And I guessed she'd enjoy having a man about the place, right? Okay, so Minnie wasn't being serious, but the more I pondered on it, the better the idea became. So I messaged her back. "Tell me more about that contest idea of yours." Then one time, when my mom was away on a business trip, I invited Minnie around. We spent all evening posting about the auditions online and handing flyers out around town. Soon, the applications came flooding in. Oh boy, some were handsome, but some, yeah, they were so not. Delete, definitely. We got everything ready to spend hours sifting through all the applicants. Gotta be strict, 'cause the chosen one had to be perfect like Prince Paris to match with a woman like my mom, whose name is actually Helen. Finally, we whittled them down to a top 10 list, and we invited them along to round 1. Fitness is important, right? Well, at least that's what Minnie says. So we set up an assault course at the local park. All the guys showed up, including Mr. Swanson, my gym teacher. Uh-oh, awkward. But hey, I suppose he was good-looking and a physically strong man. Firstly, they had to run a complete lap of the field, as stamina was important. Then they had to lift 120 pounds of weights, equal to my mom's weight. She sure needed a man who could lift her over their shoulder like they do in the movies. OMG. Watching them warming up was hilarious. One man showed up in this Lycra one-piece and started doing jumping jacks, and another guy was doing some weird karate moves. All of them completed the running section, Well, just about. But some of them struggled to lift the weights, including Mr. Swanson, who had turned bright red and was groaning. Minnie and I covered our mouths to hold back our laughs. Farewell, Mr. Swanson. That was for being mean to us in gym class. Finishing round 1, we eliminated 3 men. Too bad, as they were handsome. On to round 2. It's not all about brawn. Brains are important too. That was why Minnie and I spent 2 days noting down all the questions for our Who Wants to Be My Mom's Boyfriend quiz round. My mom deserves a man who knows everything. We set out a row of kid-sized chairs in the backyard. Then we walked along the line and fired questions at them. Suddenly, one man stood up and furiously said to the others, "Why are we letting some kids test us like this?" Then stormed off. Minnie whispered, "Not surprising, really." I saw him scratching his head at the other questions. We then eliminated those with the lowest score, leaving just 5 potentials to go through to round 3. That night, I was about to grab something to eat, and I saw my mom standing in the kitchen. She was back earlier than I thought. She was looking down at the pile of profiles on the table with in and out stamps on them. Confused, she asked me, "Zara, what is the meaning of this?" "Mom, we think you've been lonely for a long time, so Minnie and I are doing a contest to find you a man." I gave my best puppy-eyed look. "Actually, tomorrow is round 3. It'd be perfect if you could join us for the interview. Please?" Mom glared at me and shook her head. But I kept insisting until she sighed and said, "Fine, I'll come." I howled with joy and hugged her. Bring on round 3, the interview stage. Minnie and I asked the questions while Mom, Queen Helen, watched from her throne. The first one, Tyler, waved over at Mom and said, "Helen, do you recognize me?" My mom just smiled politely. Turned out, Tyler had a big crush on my mom since they were both in high school. Then when Minnie asked him to show us his talent, he ignored her and said to Mom, "Oh, Helen, I've never stopped loving you. You remember back then when we—" I shouted out, interrupting him. "Not impressive enough. Next!" The second one stepped in. Simon. Ooh, he was wearing a suit and seemed like a gentleman. "Maybe you don't recognize me," Simon spoke up. My mom's smile disappeared. "I'm Simon, the head of the engineering department in our company." Simon must have had a crush on my mom for a long time, but she sure didn't even know he existed. His talent performance was to help fix 2 faulty computers in my house. Useful, but honestly, it wasn't rocking enough. Plus, him being my mom's colleague was awkward. Duh! As soon as the third one, James, walked in, Mom sat up with a surprise. "Helen, I miss you so much," he sincerely said. Mom immediately motioned me to eliminate him, then got up and went inside. It was revealed that James was her ex-boyfriend from their college days. Okay, creep. Oh well, 2 guys left. The next one was so dreamy. He looked like he belonged in a boy band. Minnie and I clasped hands excitedly. "Hi, I'm Daniel. Nice to meet you, ladies." Daniel's smile totally melted Minnie and I. "I don't know if you ladies know, but I live on this street." Seriously? How did I not know a handsome neighbor like this? He then took out his guitar and played a song. OMG, this guy deserves straight A's. But he was only 21 years old. That was way younger than my mom. Andy was the last one of all. Very handsome and sweet. For his talent, he'd make us cupcakes. "These lovely little ones are specially made for you, lovely ladies." He smiled. Oh, how charming. In the end, Minnie and I sat together and discussed our options. Well, the result was quite obvious. I excitedly announced, "We've made our decision. My new daddy, the chosen Prince Paris to my mom Helen, the champion is Andy!" He looked chuffed and grinned over at my mom. Still, my mom maintained that polite smile and remained silent. Yay! This was great! I finally had a father. Moreover, this one makes awesome food. I couldn't wait for their first date. Eek! Now let me tell you, the date went amazingly. Andy took my mom and I to this fancy restaurant in town. He pulled the chairs out for us, ordered food he thought we'd like, then he started serving us the coolest stories ever. He really is a gentleman. If I had a boyfriend, I would want one like him. After we finished, I crossed the street to buy ice cream and caught them hugging. Perfect! Looked like things went well. Oh, Andy, I could already imagine the life where he was family. That night, Mom sat down next to me while I was texting and watching TV.
Zara, I'm glad to see you had fun these past few days.
I hummed, still texting.
But did it ever cross your mind that what you did was for you and not for me?
Excuse me? I worked hard to make her happy, and she could say that to me? I took my eyes off the phone and stared at her.
Sweetie, you only picked the man you liked the best. It's your choice, not mine. I appreciate what you did, but relationships are not that simple.
I tearfully raised my phone and shook it, saying that I already invited Andy over at the weekend to teach me how to cook. Mom smiled.
No problem. Andy and I already talked and decided to stay friends. So, this weekend's plan remains the same.
I lowered my head and apologized to her. Mom was right. I'd picked my favorite without considering her feelings. But, yeah, it wasn't all bad, as after that, Andy kept coming over most weekends. Took me to go buy groceries with him, and then cooked for us. He taught me how to cook and bake, and we even chatted about the goofy boys at my school.
Seriously, if that Richard wants a chance with a pretty girl like ours, Zara, then he should be stronger,
Andy said, while his hands were still cooking gracefully. Yeah, Richard. Burn! Speaking of being burnt, ouch! Yes, it was me who had just burnt myself in the oven thinking about all this. Andy rushed over, guided my hand over to the faucet, and ran it under cold water. Oh, geez, he was so caring and thoughtful. Unlike those childish guys my age. Soon it was my sweet 16th, and of course, Andy was the chef for dinner. Mom and Minnie just had to light up the birthday candles. Then, as I watched Andy through the candlelight, I knew I couldn't lie to myself anymore. I was in love with him. I spent days planning for the best confession to him. Only, before I could tell him how I felt, Mom told me,
Andy just called me and said he'd been offered the head chef job in New York. He's leaving next week.
What? No! Why? It was Andy, the first love of my life. That was so unfair. We didn't get any chance to see him until the day he boarded. Mom and I went to the airport to see him off. I couldn't bear watching him go, so I glued my eyes on the floor while he was still excitedly chatting with my mom.
Zara, use what I taught you to take good care of your mother, okay?
Andy winked and patted my head. I couldn't help myself any longer. I burst into tears, hugged him, and sobbed out, Andy, I love you. Please don't go. Don't leave me. I can't live without you. For a moment, the whole airport, including my mom, was stunned. All eyes were on me. Andy immediately pushed me away, clearing his throat, and said,
Zara, you're a lovely, pretty, sweet girl. You will find a suitable boyfriend.
Then he turned to Mom.
Best wishes to you both. Bye, Helen. Bye, Zara.
And I watched him walk away with tears streaming down on my face. Well, it's been 6 months since then, and I eventually realized that my feelings for Andy were just a teenage confusion. I did love him, yes, but it was more like admiring and respecting him as a father figure. Anyway, I do have a new dad now, but it was my beloved Mom's choice. His name is Harris, and he might not be as good a cook as Andy, but he's a nice guy, and he makes her happy. And of course, we still keep in touch with Andy. Both his career and his love life are doing really well in the Big Apple. I've learned my lesson. Life's full of choices, some good and some not so good. But sometimes, however much we want to, we can't make choices for other people. Instead, we just have to take a deep breath and let them make their own. High school has started, and it's going pretty well. I'm currently seeing this very cute guy in math class. Guys my age are not that bad, to be honest. Minnie's not so bad on herself either. as she's now dating that musician Daniel and enjoys touring around with him whenever he plays at concerts. What a happily fulfilled ending for everyone, isn't it? I was out for my afternoon jog and decided to take a new route. Suddenly, I saw a huge European-style mansion and had to stop to gaze at it. The walls were covered in moss, and honestly, it looked pretty eerie. I looked up, and a flock of crows were standing on the roof cawing. It sent shivers up my spine, and immediately made me think of movies like The Conjuring or something. Wouldn't be surprised if that house was haunted. Suddenly, I got startled by the voice of an old lady. "The mansion looks magnificent, doesn't it?" I turned to look at her, and she continued, "But you'd better stay away from it." "Why?" I asked her. Then she looked at me more closely and said, "Oh, you aren't a local here, are you?" I told her I was from Minnesota, but that my parents had said I could spend the summer here with my aunt. "Well, dear, let me tell you. The owner of this mansion was a young girl, super rich, but kept herself to herself. Rumor has it, she worshipped Satan. Can you believe it?" I asked her, "So where is she now?" "Oh, she mysteriously disappeared years ago, and the house has been abandoned ever since," the lady replied. Okay, this was seriously freaky. My hair was literally standing on end. But for some reason, I was more intrigued than ever. Oh, sorry, I should have introduced myself. I'm Ellie, a typical high school student, but also an avid detective story blogger. I spend a lot of my time on detective story forums and have always been attracted to weird and mysterious things ever since I was a little kid. Anyway, back to my story. So, one night, my aunt asked me to pop over to the grocery store to get some milk. On my way back, I passed the mansion and instantly got shivers. I looked up and saw a light flickering in a window on the second floor, like a candle or something. But no way. The old lady said the place was abandoned, right? The light kept flickering, and I couldn't stop watching. Suddenly, a shadow of a girl appeared. She was playing the violin, and the gloomy music was wafting through the cracks in the walls. Then, out of nowhere, a crow flew by screaming, "Caw!" I almost leapt out of my skin and ran straight home. How could anyone live in that freaky mansion? Wait a minute. What if I'd just seen the ghost of the owner who disappeared? Oh man, I had to figure this mystery out. I could even turn it into a detective story with a bit of horror thrown in for fun. As I lay there, I came up with the title, Real Life Death Mansion. And then I realized I could even make a YouTube video about it with real photos of the house and maybe even some footage taken inside as I uncover the mystery. Oh, this would be so good! I could barely sleep from excitement, and the next day, I asked my cousin Susan to come along and explore the mansion with me. "Hey Susan, wanna come check out that creepy mansion with me?" "OMG, Ellie, are you crazy? You know that place is haunted, right? Like, full of ghosts and everything." "Yeah, that's why I asked you to go with me." I shrugged. "I would rather make a detour than walk past that house to get home. So what makes you think I would dare to go inside?" I tried to convince her it would be fun, but she kept refusing. Oh well, if no one dared to go into that mansion, then I shall be the first. Gathering up my courage, I went there alone. I managed to climb over the rusty iron fence that had almost fallen to pieces in the backyard. Then I noticed a door that was slightly ajar. As I got closer, I realized a satanic symbol was engraved on the door. Creepy! I closed my eyes, held my breath, and gently pushed the door open. The smell that hit me made me feel dizzy. A musty, abandoned kind of smell. I walked into the lounge, and it felt like I just walked into some old castle in France or something. There were cobwebs everywhere, and some massive ones hanging from the chandeliers. I looked around and noticed a portrait of a girl on the wall. She was beautiful, but her eyes looked so sad. Oh my, was this the owner? The one I'd seen playing the violin? I couldn't bear to look at the portrait any longer. It felt like her eyes were piercing my soul. I headed for the stairs and crept up as quietly as possible. I won't lie, I was terrified. It was so dark up there, and with every step I took, the floorboards creaked. I kept looking behind me, as it sounded like someone was following me. By this point, I'd broken out into a cold sweat. When I made it to the second floor, there was a long corridor ahead, but it was really weird. There was only one door. I walked towards it and pushed it open. It was a luxury room, definitely fit for a princess. And yup, there was the violin. Everything was coated in a thick layer of dust, and out of the corner of my eye, I saw a picture. It was the same girl, but this time, her eyes were glowing red like fire, just like Sauron, the villain in The Lord of the Rings. I was so scared that I quickly turned the photo face down. This was when I heard the violin sound from somewhere. Okay, what was going on? The violin was right before my eyes, and I was supposed to be the only one in the house? I tried to calm down, took a deep breath, and walked in the direction of the sound next door. It was so weird, because the next door was an exact replica of the first room. Had I actually changed rooms? I walked towards the dressing table and noticed the photo in here was also turned face down. I picked it up, and it was the exact same photo, but this time, the face of the girl was bleached white. I dropped the photo in horror and ran off without looking back. I ran down the stairs 3 at a time, but when I reached the door, it was locked. I started banging on it, and by then I was hysterically crying. "Help! Help me!" I screamed. Suddenly, someone's hand touched my shoulder. My heart had definitely jumped out of my chest. Ah! I yelled at the top of my lungs, but when I turned around, there was this young guy standing there. A pretty cute one. Who are you?" I stuttered. He frowned at me and said, "Who are you? And why are you here?" I could barely speak as I was shaking so much. Then the guy said, "Come on, let's get out of here. You look horrified." Then he took out a key and opened the door. Are you a ghost or something?" I stuttered. He started laughing and said, "Pretty creepy place, right?" I asked him if he saw the photos too, and he said, "Yes, terrifying. Like something out of a horror movie," I added. "Exactly. Perfect setting for a horror movie." I stared in confusion, and he laughed and said, "Yup, we're making a movie. I mean, I'm gonna rent this place to make a horror movie." Then he introduced himself as Jack, a young director who was interested in detective and horror movies. He was just checking the place out to see if it was suitable. I couldn't believe it. Wow, this is literally a dream come true. I've been writing detective stories since I could hold a pen, and I've always hoped I'd become a screenwriter on horror and detective movies one day. I'm so honored to meet you. I'm Ellie, by the way. Then Jack replied, "The pleasure's all mine. It's a pretty exciting industry to be in. I'd love to read some of your stuff sometime." I couldn't stop grinning. Then suddenly, another person showed up. Jack introduced him as Michael, a member of his film crew. But compared to how friendly Jack was, Mike was serious and intimidating. Jack could tell that I was nervous, so he laughed and said, "Michael's been under a lot of stress, so he looks a bit grumpy, right?" I just smiled shyly and asked Jack if I could have his number. As I walked home, I couldn't believe how happy I felt. Who knew such a scary adventure would turn into an epic opportunity? I texted Jack right away, saying I would love to learn more about his film, and I had to admit, I might have had a slight crush on him. He was so cute. I kept checking my phone, but he hadn't replied. That was so disappointing. But then, a few days later, he asked me out for coffee. I was so excited, and seriously, we had the best time. He even offered to drive me home. When I got into the car, he told me to close my eyes. Eek! Maybe he was going to kiss me. I was so nervous, but suddenly, something hit my face, and I didn't know anything else. When I woke up, I found myself in some kind of warehouse, with my hands and feet tied, and my mouth taped shut. Oh my God, had I been kidnapped? Where was Jack? Suddenly, I heard a noise outside. I looked through the window and saw Jack and Michael talking to each other. What? Did the two of them plan this? But why? A moment later, Michael left, and Jack came towards me and removed the tape from my mouth. I started screaming, "Why are you doing this to me?" Then Jack said, "Listen, I'm not going to hurt you, I swear, but there's something I need to tell you." Then he confessed that he was a member of a criminal organization named Iron Gloves. His gang were operating from the mansion, and so everything from the story of the mysterious missing girl, the ghost playing the violin, the eerie photos, were all made up by them. They did it so that no one would dare approach their headquarters. According to the gang's rules, any outsider that entered the mansion would be killed to protect the secrecy of the group. Michael had seen me enter and reported it to the boss. So Jack had been forced to carry out the mission, but he didn't want to do it, so that's why he pretended to kidnap me. Dear good God, this was too much. He asked me to leave right away, but I was worried about him. He said, "Don't worry, I've been wanting to leave for a long time, and so I have a plan." Fast forward 2 years, and now I'm a freshman majoring in screenwriting. It's so exciting chasing my passion, but I still think that summer at my aunt's was one of my best yet. Terrifying, but thrilling. Oh, and as for Jack, after we chatted in the warehouse, he let me go, and I quickly packed up all my stuff at my aunt's and flew home. A few weeks later, I saw an article that said he'd turned himself in, and that the police had caught the Iron Gloves gang. Now, Jack's in prison, but will soon be free. I have a feeling that deep down, he's a good guy, and I hope that I'll have the chance to meet him again and get to know the real him better. Who knows? His real-life experience might help me write one hell of an awesome story, too.